So let's all welcome Mary Kelly.
But anyways, I just want to say thanks for this. I'm coming to the International Bulk Wine and Spirit Show. As I was told that, there's more people here than last year. I know that the times changed quite a bit, but one of my questions was, why are we all here? Why do we come to these events? And I know that there's lots of events in Europe and all around the world and in the United States, and it seems like they're about wine, they're about spirits, they're about beer. So why are we here? Why are you guys here? Are you a supplier that's looking for a home for beer, wine, spirits? Are you a retailer looking for brand equity, trying to find some more margin? Are you a broker looking for people to connect with products? Maybe a service, maybe you do labeling or packaging. Why are we all here? So, we already know that I'm Mary Kelly. So this is why we're all here. $7.9 billion. So private label sales have increased by $7.9 billion across brick and mortar in the last 3 years. So that's not even including internet sales, which I know Jenna's coming up afterwards to talk to some about direct-to-consumer. It doesn't even include that. So look at the growth that we've had. The other thing is that we're so underdeveloped. 7.9 billion is only 17% of penetration in the United States. If you look at Europe and across the other countries, Germany's at 45% penetration for private label brands. We're so far behind the curve, and we have a long way to go. So we're all here because we want a piece of this $7.9 billion. And how are we going to get it? Well, let's talk about that. So it all started here, and I brought my phone up because I know everyone has one because I can see everybody, with their phones. You either have it in your hand or close by. So I put this up here because it's a picture of a phone, but tell you the truth, it's really your consumer. It's a picture of your consumer, not an iPhone, because access to real-time and unlimited information is right at your fingertips. You can be, right now I'm here, you can go ahead and check, is that $7.9 billion? Is she really right? Well, you can check me right here in the audience while I'm talking. So you have a more discerning customer. They know what they're talking about. And so what does that mean? It means that they're comparing price, ingredients these days, whether it's organic, non-GMO. So all these things are at their fingertips. And what does that mean? It means that national brands, it's a race to the bottom for price. So I wanted to give a scenario, and this is something that, when I decided to go into the private label business, let's say Kroger has Kendall Jackson Chardonnay. Does everybody remember when Kendall was like the #1 Chardonnay and everybody had to have it? So Kroger has Kendall Jackson Chardonnay at $14.99 on the shelf. And they're all excited because they're getting foot traffic and they're selling a lot of it. Well, all of a sudden, Safeway says, wait a minute, you guys have Kroger, they're stealing our market share and our foot traffic because they've got Kendall Jackson on the shelf. So what do? Well, let's go to $12.99. We're still making some money. Let's go to $12.99 and try and get those people in. So Safeway goes to $12.99. And then we can maybe guess what happens next. Total Wine comes in. And what does Total Wine do? They go to $10.99. You know why? Because they're not making any money and they don't care. Because what are they going to do with it? They're going to use it as a lost leader. They're going to say, okay, let's put that Kendall Jackson Chardonnay in the ad, and let's tell all our people that we have really good wine for a great price. So then what does Kroger and Safeway do? All these margins are getting squeezed. They're not making any money, and now they've even lost their foot traffic. So then they go to their distributor. They go to their distributor and say, hey, we need some more margin. You guys are going to have to take less margin because we are. And the distributor goes, wait a minute, why do I have to take lower margin? You guys are the ones that decided to take the price down. So then the distributor goes to the supplier and says, we need better costs. So nobody's winning. So it's a race to the bottom on national brands that people can compare. So what does that mean? Private label was is now born. Private label is now born because it has to give the retailers a way to make margin. How are they going to make margin? They can't not make any money in their wine and spirits department. I put this up because it's concept to consumer, but if we have to remember, which a lot of times we forget, that this is an agricultural industry that we're in. Sometimes it's hard to remember that when you look on the shelf and you see all the bourbons and the vodkas and the nice bottles of wine. But it all starts agricultural business. So we have some risks, and it's commodity. So if you're not a supplier, then guess what? If the demand is higher than the supply, you're going to be paying a lot more money. And these are things that you need to think about when you want to create a private label. So one of the things that I want to make sure that we all think about throughout this presentation when we're trying to get a piece of that 7.9 billion pie, what are we remembering? You have to know your customer. And that means your end user. So if you're a supplier and you have a retailer as your customer, that's okay. You need to know your customer, but you also need to know the end user. Because if not, you may not be making that product for too long. So you need to know your demographics. Are they male, female, 50%, 60%? Who are you really marketing to? Another big one is disposable income. So we talk about millennials so often, but it doesn't mean that all of our consumers are the same. Everybody, depending on your situation, is going to be a different consumer. But millennials are taking over the baby boomers within the next 2 years with disposable income. Well, I don't know about you, but that's important to know. It's important to know that millennials are now going to have the most disposable income. So do you guys know how millennials shop? Anybody know what they like? If you don't, you should. Doesn't matter whether you're a supplier or a retailer or a broker. You need to know who your customer is and how they shop. So millennials, they like convenience, right? They like it to be here right now. They like an experience. Everybody says, what's an experience? Well, they like to experience things. They like to go to wineries. They like to go to distilleries. They like to go to a restaurant. And how many people have seen the Krogers and some of the places that have in-store restaurants? You know, now you can go shopping and sit down and have a glass of wine or a cocktail. So all of this is important. The other thing is know your internal data from your retailer. So say vodkas are hot, botanical vodkas are hot. How many do you have? Do you have 10? Do you need 10? Are they all in low end or are they high? You need to know your data. Do you have any gaps? Are flavors working? So what really goes into creating a private label brand? So there's lots of things. Make sure you keep in mind your end consumer, because a lot of times we get lost and we get off track. So how many people have said, oh, let's do this because I like it? It doesn't really matter what you like. It matters what your end consumer likes. I had a customer who had a master sommelier that they hired on staff to come in and consult them on what wine and what blends to offer on their shelf. Well, you know what their pricing was? It was like $7.99. Do you need a master sommelier to tell you what blend? Are you wasting your money? Maybe you should go ask the people that are coming in your door. What do they like? So let's go behind this curtain and talk about a few things of the steps of how do we really get to a private label? What goes into it? One is sourcing. And if you look, I have a little guy in a cart, a girl, or neutral, gender, you know what I'm talking about. But they do have a male and female bathroom, so it's different here. But I want everybody to remember that the consumer should always be in the back of your mind, no matter what you're doing. If you're going to source international or domestic, do you even sell international products in your store, in your restaurant? If you do, what's the percentage? You know, do you already have 50% of your stuff is international, but really only 30% of your people are buying it? These are things that you need to think about Do you want standard or premium? Am I looking for a California or a Napa cab? Am I looking for an American whiskey, or does it need to be from Kentucky? Your customers, remember, on that phone, they can check and they know all these things. Blending, you have to think of your taste profile. Okay, well, do we want sweet, dry? And we all know that people always say, I like a dry wine, and it's really sweet. The spirits that we have, they say, no, I don't want anything sweet, but then their favorite spirit is the one that has the most sugar. So we have to find that balance. And as people's tastes change, and so do you. Do you need a potato, wheat, corn, rye? What are you going to use when you make your product? There's all these different options. Packaging, and we have a nice package of a gem vodka, which is a private label that our company Terrasentia has just put together. And you have to think about bottling. So it's this beautiful bottle, but before you pick the best bottle, is it going to work on your bottling line? Because you know how many people we've had that come with this beautiful bottle? Oh, I bought it from Spain. Well, it looks fantastic, but guess what? We're going to have to hand do it because it doesn't go on the bottling line. Or you have to hand dip, wax dip all your tops. Well, that's all done by hand. You have all these people doing this. So you have to be careful what you promise in your packaging, or you're going to get in trouble. You're going to get in trouble, and you're not going to make any money at the end of the day. The other thing on there is timing and inventory. So when it comes to packaging, you need to make sure you have all your pieces together at the same time. And you know, if you have a capsule, a cap, a label, a bottle, what's your inventory? How much do you have to buy? So it's not just the juice that goes in the bottle. You have to think about all of that. Up here we have marketing trends. So does anybody know what some of the trends are? Bourbon is hot, and it's a good thing because I'm in the bourbon business. So bourbon is hot right now. Gins are hot. Rosés, sparkling. And who would have thought that a rosé gin would be really popular right now? So how many people have seen pink gins on the shelf? Yeah, I mean, these things are starting to pop up, and who would have thought that we would have been able to do something like that? Cocktails are the new craze. Hard ciders. People are looking for organic, non-GMO. The other thing that's very important is premium brands. So people are looking for premium brands. So please don't trade your customer down. Going back to that scenario with Kendall Jackson Chardonnay, if Kendall Jackson Chardonnay is at $9.99 and you're not making any money, are you going to display it? Are you going to put 100 cases in the lobby? Why would you do that? You're just losing money. Do you think that maybe you should put it $12.99 and try and trade that customer up? Make sure you have different levels and tiers of pricing. What's your strategy? I put 2 bottles of Maomi Pinot Noir up here because if you're in the wine business, then you know. I don't know how many people came to me and said, I want a wine that tastes just like Maomi. So here you are. Why? Because it gave a value. They're talking that it was originally $17.99. I don't know what it's on the shelf right now for, but it came out and it was this high-priced wine, and it didn't cost people a lot to make. It was a win-win. And how do we know that? Because Constellation bought it. So here these people had this great idea, and then all of a sudden a big company says, we'll buy it. And guess what? They bought the name. They didn't even buy the juice because it was different land, so they put their own juice in it. It was just the whole image that did that. So do you want to do a knockoff? Do you want to have an Absolute and say, I want to sell Absolute or Grey Goose? Are you filling a void? Do you not have enough Zinfandel on your shelf? Do you have too many $9.99s and not enough $12.99s? Are you building a brand? Are you starting an internet sales? These are all things to consider, but don't forget the little guy in the corner, keeping in mind your end consumer. So then you need an importer, distributor, shipping. And transportation is pretty key, and guess what? It costs a lot of money. You have to pay state taxes, and then what happens if the gas prices go up? All of a sudden you're paying more money for your shipping. You have your distributor, you have to negotiate pricing and margin. All of that's negotiable. You don't go in and say, okay, how much do you guys make, and add it to your bottom line. These are things that you can negotiate. and say, all right, let's take a lower margin because this is an in and out. It's not a sustainable brand. Pricing. So now I know that I have this little one bullet thing here with pricing, but pricing could be a whole new, we could talk all day about pricing. What I want to make sure you guys realize is that 1/3 of the private label categories, market shares increase as your price increases. All right, let me say that again. All you guys that are on your computers, because this is an important one. If you're going to listen now, 30 seconds. Private label categories, 1/3, your market share increases as your price goes up. How many markets do that? So you're telling me if I take my price up, I'm going to actually increase my market share? Yes. It's not a bad business to be in, is it? But on the flip side of that, 28% see the market share decrease when they take the price down. Okay, so that's the same thing, guys. You shouldn't take, so who's going to take their price down? Is anybody going to take their price down in private label? It doesn't sound like very good strategy to me, but guess what? It sounds like a great industry, and we're growing. So do you want to trade your customers up? Premiumization, being a premium brand? Do you know that everybody, even the millennials, are saying that they're willing to pay for a premium brand if it's perceived as being of value? I know that Tim Haney was here earlier talking about perception. Well, it's a perception of quality and value that you have to perceive to your consumer. Compliance. Now, compliance is one that I don't usually like too much, but as I said, if you're doing a private label, you have to know all of these aspects. Even if you outsource some of them, you still have to have an idea. Because guess what? If you don't have all right licensing, you could get in trouble. And you're not going to be able to do it, or all of a sudden you make something and you can't sell it. Do you need to register for TTB and COLA for your labels? How long does that take? If you forget to do it, oh gosh, what happens? To different states, if you're going to expand to other states, what are the qualifications that you need to know for that state? Because if not, all of a sudden you think you're going to kick something off and it takes 45 days to get into Tennessee. So you have to know these things. Direct ship, duty free, all of these things have different rules, laws, and regulations. The one thing about direct shipping, with wine and spirits, it's probably the biggest difference. Wines, they're fighting and fighting for more states that they can ship to, but guess what? With spirits, the laws are so different. They're not there yet. So they're fighting, and we're lobbying to get these all changed. I used to work for St. Michel Wine Estates when Altria purchased them. They're a tobacco company. I'd be in the strategic planning meetings, and the lawyers would be like, Mary, we thought tobacco was bad. It's like, how do you keep up with all the laws, with all this wine and spirits? And it changes every day. So if you're not up on this, you need to every day see what the new changes are. What are some of the pitfalls? Well, as I said from the start, knowing your consumer. Because you can see if you get off track, it's really easy to get off track with all these things. And if you get off track, one thing can derail you. Keep in mind your end consumer, or no one's going to buy it. So make sure that you know about all these, no matter how many you decide to outsource or do yourself. And remember, when you outsource, you might make more money, but what does that mean? More work. You put more work in, you outsource, so you have to figure out which ones you want to do. The other biggest pitfall is that last one on the bottom. You're not making enough money. Because after it's all said and done, you think, oh, it's a beautiful package, I want to do it, but guess what? Oh my gosh, it just ate into my margin. Because everybody needs to make a piece. So make sure you're going to make enough money before you put it out there. And then, how do we keep it? Sustainability. Well, guess what? After we talked about all of this, you really, really need to continue to recreate yourself. You have to know your end consumer, but your consumer may change. So does anybody know what the #1 discontinued item is when I started surveying my customers for this? Flavored vodka. So flavored vodka was a big, huge craze, and now all of a sudden, they're discontinuing all the flavored vodka. But guess what's going in its place? Botanicals. Okay, so wait a minute, flavored vodkas are out and botanicals are in. So all of these people that have put all their hard effort and time into making these flavored vodkas now are trying to switch to a botanical. So these are the things that you need to know what the trends are. Offer yourself a point of difference. So sometimes it's a charity or an award, whatever it is. These are the things that you have to continue to keep your brand on the shelf and relevant for people to pick it off the shelf. So we're creating an experience too. If you can anyway create an experience, that's what people want. So I wanted to give my last piece that next year, when I see you guys all here at the International Bulk Spirits and Wine Show, that you come to me and you tell me, how did you create your piece of that pie? What did you do to get to that piece? Because there's a lot that goes into it in your thought process. So I'd like to know what your piece of that $7.9 billion is. Thank you. I guess we're taking questions.
Yes, we have time for questions. Coming around with the mic. Anyone needs one?
No questions?
Over here.
Hey, Mary, Kathy Steen. Just a quick question, and if you could comment on know your consumer, which you made clearly, that's understood, and then trends. Most retailers, I'm assuming, have kind of briefs in mind of these categories based on data that they really want to focus on for private labels. How do you convince retailers to jump on trends in the early stages? I would use maybe rosé wine or rye whiskey as examples so that they could ride that hockey stick and the growth trend from the early days, as opposed to, and the question is, are they open to consultants like yourself really trying to convince them to get on, a trend early?
Sure. Time to market is huge. I mean, timing in your market is very important. So if you think like some of the flavored vodkas is a good example, again, that we'll take. Some people didn't do it so soon. They came late to the market, and guess what? They didn't ride that wave. Where at least some of the ones that were early, that came into the market early, got their money, and now they're switching to botanicals because they may already know how to do it. So the retailers, some of them are new at this too. I mean, we have some that are more experienced than others, but some of them need some coaxing and some consulting in what do we do next. And sometimes you have to go through their data. So I was talking with someone earlier about where do you get your data? How do you know how much private label is selling? Well, guess what? We don't. We don't get the private label data from Total Wine or from Bevmo or from Kroger. They don't share their private label data with us. So you have to go on the trends. Gin's hot, bourbon's hot. If you have an educated consumer, if I were to choose, I wouldn't go with an American whiskey, I'd go with a Kentucky 2-year straight bourbon, because that's the trend, and the people and your consumers are more educated, and they're going to be in the future too. So not only ride the wave early, but be flexible, because guess what? You might have that, flavored vodka for a couple years, but be okay when you have to turn it around to a botanical. Be prepared for that. Good question, Kathy.
So from your time at St. Michel to Terra Essentia, how has your approach to brand life cycle changed from national brand to private label?
That's a great question, because I tell you, St. Michel's a great company. I was with Diageo before that. So I've been with large companies. I was with them each, for 8 years each. And they're great companies in building brands. And when you're with St. Michel, for example, you go in and you're like, how do we build from our organic growth? Say you have the St. Michel, let's use Chardonnay, like, we had the example from Kendall Jackson. You go in and as a retailer, let's put, the St. Michel Chardonnay one more time in an ad. So say you have 3 ads a year. Do we go 4? You know, what's the price elasticity? If we put it on, are we going to trade down customers? Are we not going to take advantage of another brand that maybe we could use? Or are people going to buy it anyway? And if we're selling it at $12.99 versus $10.99, are we still going to make our money? So with the private brands, it's hard because it's a mass production almost, that everybody has the same thing. So Kroger, Safeway, Total, they all have the same product. You're not offering them anything different. You're building a brand, but so for example, at Total Wine, they don't like to build brands for other people. They like to build their own brands. So when you have a Ste. Michelle Chardonnay, they're building a brand for Ste. Michelle Chardonnay, but they're doing it and Kroger's gonna take advantage of it, Safeway's gonna take advantage of it. So what's in it for them in brand building? So brand building is a huge thing when it differentiates between a national brand and a private label. So private label to me was so interesting. I'm like, okay, so not only can the retailer make their own product, whether it's a wine or spirit, not only can they really dial into what their consumer is looking for and their packaging on the shelf, but they can make money on it and then build that brand, and it's brand loyalty. Take, for example, a hotel or a restaurant chain. If they get a private brand in, they're building brand loyalty, and people can only go there and have it and enjoy it. So the more they build that brand, the better it is for them. So it's all about brand building when it comes, the difference between national to private label brands. Anybody else? Ah, perfect timing. Thank you, I appreciate it.